Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the second season of Shooting Straight Living Life in Truth. My name is Charles. I'm your host for the evening. And give me just a second. Need to turn off this air conditioner real quick. All right, guys. This evening, we're going to try and hit as much as we possibly can regarding my time and my experience in Desert Storm as a soldier in combat. We may not be able to get to everything. If that's the case, then we'll carry it over to next week. But for now, I want to actually get into basically what my introduction to Saudi Arabia was like. Uh, that was an interesting thing in general. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into it right now. And the first thing that I'd like to bring up and show you guys, because I want to address something before it actually comes up, because we all know there are a lot of haters out on the internet these days that would try to disprove anything and anybody and whatnot. So I want to present you guys with some evidence and some facts so that you guys know I'm not giving you any baloney here. All right. So let's go ahead and pull up the DD-214 there. This is the evidence that I was talking about. On the right hand side is my shadow box. Those are all legitimate awards that I achieved while I was in the military over certain periods of time. On the right hand side over there, you'll see all my active duty units that I served with. Well, not all of them, but that's most of them. On the left hand side, those are some of the National Guard and Reserve units that I served with. The DD-214 shows my active duty time. But if you notice in there, it lists all those awards. They're all listed there. It lists a couple of my schools and courses that I took while I was in. And down at the bottom, you'll see that it says I had an honorable discharge. The rest of the information is actually redacted out by me personally because you guys just don't need to know that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to address that issue, make sure everybody understands that the stuff that I claim during this video and the next couple of videos that we do on my military experience are all legit. I did serve. There's the evidence, just in case anybody wants to say it's not true. Because there are some things that I'm going to talk to you about that occurred during Desert Storm with me personally that are not the norm in most people's military experience, but they happen to me. And if anybody wants to go digging to see if I'm telling you the truth, by all means, go right ahead. Because that's what this show is about, is shooting straight, living life in truth. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. If I get something incorrect or I misunderstand something and I put that information out there, that is unintentional. If you guys catch anything like that, ever catch anything like that, let me know. I will make sure that it gets corrected quick, fast, and in a hurry. So, with that said, without further ado, we'll go ahead and pull up the map of the region where Desert Storm took place. I'm doing this because I want you guys to get a lay of the land and understand basically where I was at when I was in Desert Storm. Now, initially, when we first got to the field, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but I want you guys to get this picture because you're going to need it in order to understand anything and everything else that I say going forward. If you look on your screen in the center, down towards the bottom, there's what looks like an upside down triangle with rounded corners to it that has 1st Cavalry Division written right underneath it. These are the positions where everyone was when the ground assault began. So initially they weren't that far forward, they were back just a little bit. If you look right below where that unit patch is for the 1st Cavalry Division, you'll see a little mark for Alpha-Robotin. That's a small town that sits right on the northernmost hardball road. In other words, the most north paved road in Saudi Arabia. I was actually stationed 12 miles east of that. So if you come back just a little bit um, where that white circle is with the blue hash mark, I was actually right in between those two areas. And the 1st Cavalry originally was actually behind us. The 1st Infantry was out in front of us. I was with a medical clearing company. I'll go over that here in just a little bit when I show some evidence about that as well. But in general, that's the location in the area in which I was stationed while I was in Desert Storm during my actual field time. Now down below in the center there in the middle, you'll see another white circle with a blue hash mark going through it. That's King Khalid Military City. We referred to it as KKMC. I actually spent a little bit of time there towards the end of the war. When there was some confusion within the upper echelon as to who they were going to send north to help with the Kurds and the situation that was going on with them, my unit was actually one of the ones being considered to do that job. So we ended up spending some time there at KKMC for a little bit, waiting on word whether or not we were going to go help the Kurds or whether we were actually going to go back home. But I'll get to that in more detail later on. But for now, I want to pull up the Air Force timeline so that you guys can kind of get a concept for how quick all of this actually took place. In August of 1990, the 2nd of August, according to this, Iraq invades Kuwait, and I believe that is the correct date. On the 7th of August, it says officially that Desert Storm, their Desert Shield begins. Essentially, Desert Shield was the name given to the operations to build up the troops in the area until we got to an actual capable fighting force that would have been capable of actually fighting Saddam's military at the time. And at the time, he had the 4th largest military in the world. So there was some debate as to how many troops that we would actually need for it. But fortunately, one of the things that President Bush did that I felt that was right was letting General Schwarzkopf basically call the shots when it came to the military operation. He asked General Schwarzkopf to present a plan. General Schwarzkopf presented the plan. He looked it over. There was some consensus about it, and he approved it and let us go ahead and take care of business. But initially, President Bush announced on August 4th that we were going to be sending additional troops over there other than what was already there. So the official formal beginning of Desert Shield was on August 7th when the first set of additional troops started going over there. Then, as you can see, there was a few other events with the Air Force there that happened. Me personally, I remember sitting in the lobby area, or the recreational area of my dorm, because I was actually attending Oral Roberts University at the time that all of this stuff went down. And I remember sitting there watching TV and watching President Bush saying that he was going to send additional troops over, and listening to what he was saying and how he was saying it. I knew in my gut and deep down in that myself and my unit were going to be going. I can't explain that to you. I just know. I knew. I kind of suspected at the time that it was probably God or the Holy Spirit kind of prompting me, letting me know. Whatever it was, that particular moment, I knew I was going. For months afterwards, my unit leadership and other people kept saying, nope, nope, we're not going. We're not even on the list for consideration. And I'm like, no, we're going. So I spent that time preparing, getting documents in order, preparing wills, all that kind of stuff that I knew they were going to ask for um, during that time. Now, at the end of October, that's when we finally got the call, and it became official. Well, actually, it was beginning of October. It became official that we were going to get called up. They gave us 2 weeks to get things in order and to report to our National Guard unit, which was the 145th Medical Clearing Company at the time. It was in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Um, Pardon me. So at the end of that 2 weeks, it brought us to right around the end of October when we got locked down and started going through all the prep work, getting all the paperwork stuff ready, having equipment issued to us and things like that. We spent about, I want to say it was about 2 to 3 weeks doing that at the National Guard unit itself. And then we were sent down to Fort Sill, which was an active duty Air Force base, or Army base. I forget. Fort Sill. Yeah, it was Fort Sill Army base. And then from there, we went to the Air Force base right down the street on the other side of town, basically, when we were deployed. But while we were there at Fort Sill, we spent a month, pretty much all of November, well, half of November, because by the time we got down there, it was like mid-November. So about half November, and then most of December, we spent doing NBC training. For those that aren't familiar with that terminology, it's nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare training. During that time frame, we were training on the equipment, making sure that everybody was proficient, that could get their MOP gear on, the mission-oriented protective posture, which is all the overgarments that are filled with charcoal and stuff to help prevent contact with any kind of chemical agents. Donning our masks, the gloves, boots, all that stuff. They all got inspected. We all got issued new stuff. We all trained with some of the new gear that we were getting. They sized us for the masks, ran us through the gas chambers, all that kind of stuff. We spent a month doing that stuff. And I'm glad we did, and you'll understand why as I get more into this later on. At the time, though, it was kind of frustrating and annoying because it was almost like beating a dead horse by the time that month was over. But like I said, I'm glad we did. And then come the end of December, we did Christmas at Fort Sill. And then right after Christmas, I want to say about 2-3 days after Christmas is when we actually went over to the Air Force base and flew over to Saudi Arabia. Now, when we got there, it was interesting because as we were coming in for a landing, aside from seeing the buildings and the cities, which, looked pretty normal for the most part, everything else was just sand for as far as the eye could see. When you're up in an aircraft, you can see a lot farther than when you can on the ground. So everything around us looked like sand. On the left side, the right side, behind us, in front of us, it all was sand. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a treat. So when we finally landed and we were disembarking the plane, at the threshold, right where, the stairs meet up with the aircraft itself and whatnot, as soon as I set my foot on that and crossed through that threshold, I got a feeling I can't even remotely describe at this point. I couldn't describe it back then. I can't really describe it now. It was weird. It was like a dirty kind of feeling, but it was also a heaviness. And the only way that I could think to describe it at the time, and the only way I can think to describe it now, is that it was like the atmosphere of a heavy demonic influence over the nation. I don't. I'm not trying to get into any kind of religious type thing or any kind of spiritual stuff tonight, but that's the best way I can think to describe what I experienced when I got off the plane. Um, but yeah, it was crazy. Um, and from there, we actually caught a bus to go to the Port of Dammam, because the Port of Dammam was where all of our equipment and stuff was supposed to be being shipped into. And we got there, I want to say probably about 4 days before New Year's. And by the time New Year's rolled around, some of our equipment had already showed up, some of the smaller stuff. Um, and we were basically putting in, 14, 16, 18-hour days, trying to ensure all the equipment was where it was supposed to be, all the inventory was proper, things were packaged properly, so that when we actually went out to the field, we'd know where to find everything and nothing was damaged. So we were putting in some really long days, and New Year's Eve, midnight rolls around. And I don't know if y'all have ever been around any kind of ports when New Year's rolls around, but when it does, every ship in the harbor goes "Ah," like a friggin' semi truck. And let me tell you what, you want to talk about getting woke out of a dead sleep? To that, it's kind of a rude awakening. But hey, it was New Year's. Gonna let it slide. Gonna try and celebrate for a little bit. After about 30 minutes, everybody was like ready to go back to bed. So they're like, all right, enough with the horns already. Um, but that was my initial introduction to Saudi Arabia. And the trippy part about that whole thing was on the way to the Port of Dammam on the bus. This is where I really got a rude welcome. We're driving down the freeway. This freeway is like an 8-lane freeway, 4 lanes going one way, 4 lanes going the other way. And as we're driving along, all of a sudden the bus driver just starts going off. Like, I mean, nobody knew what was going on, and he was sitting up there carrying on, ranting and raving, like somebody with road rage that just missed their exit or something. Uh, I mean, we could just imagine that what he was saying was a lot of profanity. Um, and at first we were kind of laughing about it, and we were just thinking, go down to the next exit, turn around, come back, we're fine. It's all good. That's not what happened. In fact, as soon as he was done with his ranting and raving, we felt the bus stop. The brakes get hit, and the bus comes to a complete stop. I'm talking 0 miles an hour on a 4-lane highway with cars doing 80 to 100 miles an hour just zipping past you, not like you're sitting still,
Excuse
but
me.
zipping past you because you are sitting still. And guess who's in the very back seat right next to the emergency exit? You got it. Yours truly. That was me. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, good God Almighty, I flew 15,000 some odd miles to come over here and fight in a war, and I'm going to die in a car accident. Does anybody find any irony in that? uh, but I was just like, oh my God, God, please just get me through this. Just get me through this in one piece. I didn't come over here to die in a car accident. um, so we sit there for a few minutes, car after car after car, truck after truck after truck, just zipping past us, other buses flying by us. And then suddenly there's this gap in traffic where there's nobody coming at all. So we're like, okay, what's he going to do now? What does he do? He puts the bus in reverse, starts driving backwards so he can go catch his exit. I'm like, I immediately turn around, look out the back window, and guess what? Here comes some more cars doing 80 to 100 miles an hour, and we're driving backwards on the interstate. I'm like, no, 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 no. Lord have mercy. But that was my introduction to Saudi Arabia. And then,
Oh boy!
yeah, right? So then we hop on a bus and we get all of our military vehicles and everything else into a convoy, and we start heading out to where we're supposed to be out in the field. Well, somebody makes a wrong turn and we end up in Kuwait before the ground war started. So we had to do a quick U-turn real fast and come back to that northern road there in Saudi Arabia and head out there to the field. All right. Now, by this time, we're talking this is somewhere in the January time frame. So it was a very short time afterwards, once we got set up and once we had the experience of two military convoys coming down a two-lane highway on that northernmost paved road. One of us going this way, the other coming this way, and Saudis driving BMWs and Mercedes right down the middle. No fear in the world, just, I mean, zipping right down through the middle of us, doing 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour in between two military convoys. I'm like, wow. Wow. That's all I could say. We finally get out to the field. We get set up. And we were out there where I showed you guys on the map. And then they flew all those sorties and everything else. And then the ground war started. And that's when this started happening. I know on the news and stuff, you guys probably saw, masses amounts of vehicles and whatnot moving in a flanking formation, i.e., all in a straight line going this way, not this way. Well, we did that going through areas that we knew were safe, but there were so many minefields and stuff that had to be navigated. And most of the time our traveling was looking like this, especially at the very beginning of the ground war. And I'll tell you more about it later. But when myself and the chaplain went up to Log Base Elko to help with some of the enemy POWs, we had to go through a few of those minefields, and I'll kind of describe those and tell you what those are like later on. But for now, now that we've discussed all this, let's talk about some of the environmental things that we had to deal with in Desert Storm. One of those things was the infamous sandstorms. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a sandstorm. I know some of you probably seen them in the movies like Scorpion King or something like that. Well, it's one thing Hollywood got right. This is what a sandstorm really looks like when it's coming at you. It is insane. Absolutely insane, I'm telling you. It's very intimidating looking, and once you get inside of a sandstorm, it's not any better. Because once you get inside a sandstorm, your visibility is severely cut. Now you see this picture, right? You can see the guy in the middle pretty clearly. You can see the signpost and what pillar off to the right pretty well. And you can basically see what looks like outhouses or some kind of building in the background back there. Well, this is what I would consider a mild to moderate sandstorm. There were some sandstorms that were so bad that you could not see a semi-truck and trailer parked less than 50 yards from you. It was that bad. I mean, some of them were so bad that when if this picture would have been taken during one of those storms, you would basically be able to see a silhouette of the guy there in the middle, and maybe pick out that was a sign pillar on the right hand side there. Those little guide ropes, you wouldn't have saw those at all. It's horrendous, and the sand is so fine and so gritty that when we knew sandstorms were coming, not only would we have on our normal battle dress uniforms, but we would also throw on, our field jackets and maybe some of our rain parkers or something like that, just to get some extra layers of clothing onto us when these sandstorms blew through. Because then we had to put on the goggles, and those goggles, man, were, I mean, you've probably seen them in like dirt races and stuff. They're the big goggles, that take up this much space on your face. And we put those on. They had these, special linings around the side to try and keep the sand from actually getting inside and whatnot. They form fitted to your face. And then we had these scarves that we would have to wrap around our mouths and our nose and whatnot in order to try and keep the sand out. But this sand was so fine and so coarse that no matter what you did, you could not keep the sand out. Even with 3 layers of clothing on, that sand still got on the inside, got onto your skin, and chafing was a huge problem for everybody. And it was miserable. It was uncomfortable. At night, when the sandstorms would blow through at night, the way we did our tents, we knew it was coming. So when we did our tents, there's some flaps down on the bottom that you actually fold out. So we folded those out instead of keeping them rolled up like we normally did. But we folded those out. We put a bunch of sand on top of those flaps, and then turned around and put sandbags on top of that in order to try and keep the sand out. Now, the tents that we were staying in at the time were the GP mediums, GP larges, GP smalls, general purpose tents that were meant for use with just about anything. So we had the inside white liners, and the tents themselves were made out of canvas. And we'd batten down all the hatches, close everything up, trying to keep the sand out. And for the most part, it did pretty good, but it didn't keep the sand out. And you would wake up in the morning, your nose would be so clogged you couldn't breathe through your nose, and you had to breathe through your mouth. And when you breathed through your mouth, you started realizing that your throat was sore and your mouth was feeling dry and gritty. And then you did the typical thing in the morning, and you realized your mouth was full of sand. You'd have to spit out sand out of your mouth, and then grab your canteen, knock like a half an inch worth of dust off of your canteen, clean that off before you could open it up to take a drink, to wet your mouth and get the sand out of your mouth. And it was incredibly miserable. And we had the mummy sleeping bags. So the only thing that really showed was this right here on your face. That was the only thing anybody could see when you were inside them. And even on the inside of your sleeping bags, it would be filled with sand. You'd wake up in the morning and you have to take it out and go like this, and knock a whole bunch of sand would come out. And then you'd have to go outside and take a stick or a trenching tool or a broom or whatever or something that you could get your hands on and beat that thing to knock the dust out of it. It was so bad. It was just just miserable, absolutely miserable. But other than that, I guess the next thing that I remember the most about Saudi Arabia was the wildlife. The wildlife was like from another planet. What you have on your screen right now is what's known as the camel spider. Yes, that is a spider. Camel spider. And they got their name for a reason. Because when these guys bite you, they actually don't really bite you initially. They inject their fangs into their prey, and their venom is more like a neurotoxin. So it's like a lidocaine or a novocaine. So it numbs an entire region of whatever their prey is, and they just sit back and wait for that to take effect. Once it takes effect, see those pincers on the front of his face there? Yeah, just like crab pincers. All right. And what they would do, they would reach out onto their prey, pinch some flesh in their pincers, and then rip it off of their prey, and then sit there and work their pincers like this, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until the flesh got back to their mouth, which actually sits between the pincers, right below where those two black beady little eyes are. And that's how they would eat. And they got their name camel spider because, well, driving down the road on the way out to the field, we saw a few camels that on the back halves, the hindquarters, back where the thigh and the hip is. You know how you'll have the body here and then that hip kind of comes out and then around, forming that big hip leg muscle, thigh muscle on a camel. Well, these guys were known for taking that outward curve and making it an inward curve. Yeah, that's how much they would eat. Because you see that the abdomen in the back there, where you got the black stripe running down the middle, that's actually an accordion abdomen. So it stretches as they fill it up with food. So they could go months on one meal. And some of these guys, on an empty stomach, nothing in their abdomen, just as small as they could be, are as big as my hand. Some I actually saw were a little bit bigger than my hand. But then imagine getting that much flesh into the abdomen. I mean, these guys can go from this to, as big as a camel's calf. It's insane. And they're scary. Just to give you an example, these guys, I mean, you didn't just find them sitting in the sand like this, all right? In our tents, there were times where we found them crawling on the walls, crawling on our cots, crawling on people's shoes, boots, and equipment, and gear. Even found them crawling across the ceiling one time. I'll give you one story about that. A gentleman that slept two bunks down from me, or two cots down from me, was a black gentleman who was severely afraid of spiders and snakes. And one day, I had somebody get my attention and point up to the ceiling of the tent. And when I looked up to the ceiling of the tent, that's when I found one of these guys crawling on the ceiling of the tent, directly above my friend two bunks down. Now, I myself could not let the guy sit there and sleep, knowing that thing was sitting there above him and knowing what it was capable of. So I reach over, I tap him, he doesn't wake up. I smack him a couple times, doesn't wake up. I shake him a bit, and he finally wakes up. And he's upset, of course, because, I mean, he was up all night, finally getting a chance to get some downtime, get some sleep. And I'm waking him up. So I'm like, so he's starting to cuss me a bit. Pardon me. And I look at him and I say, hold on, calm down just a minute. I'm doing this for your benefit. Look. And I point up to the ceiling and he sees that camel spider. I'm telling you guys, he went from laying flat on his back, all right, from being half in, half out, half conscious from just waking up, to on his feet and 10 bunks down in about 2 seconds. That's what he was doing. That's exactly what he was doing. And everybody in the tent just busted up laughing because he took off so hard. He literally he didn't just knock his bunk over, but he took off with such force, it picked his cot up off the ground and placed it on the cot next to mine upside down as he took off to the other doorway. Man, we laughed about that for weeks after the fact. It was hilarious. I was like, oh my goodness. But yeah, that's camel spiders for you. And those were everywhere, along with the sandstorm and the crazy Saudi driving and all that kind of stuff. And Well, the next form of wildlife that really got to us and had us concerned was this guy right here, the emperor scorpion. Some of you recognize it because you're into these arachnids and these kind of species and animals, but for a lot of people they don't know, this is an emperor scorpion. It's a scorpion that looks like an armored tank, and that's really what he is. Um, the pincers that he's got are like crabs. Um, the sacks there, it just everything about this guy just screams, "I'll kill you," and they will kill a full grown human being, a full grown human man. Um, so we definitely kept our eyes out for those things everywhere, because like the camel spider, they went everywhere. The only thing we never saw this guy do was climb on the ceiling or the walls of a tent. But pretty much everything else we've seen them do. And you know, we heard all these rumors about he was king of the hill when it came to the scorpions, which is why they call him the emperor scorpion. But some of the other scorpions we saw, we weren't so sure because there were green scorpions and there were yellow scorpions. And this guy right here is one of the green ones. He kind of has that yellowish green look in this photo, but he's more of a green color. Um, and he's a monster too. And these were the yellow scorpions. So and they're all big, big scorpions. The green ones got to be as big as those emperor scorpions were. And a few of the guys caught a couple of these around camp, caught a couple of the green ones, and another guy caught an emperor scorpion in one of his boots. So they decided, because this was after the ground war and everything, and we were getting kind of antsy waiting around to find out what our next orders were. So for entertainment purposes, they decided they were going to get one of these big like wash basins that we had there, and they decided to put the emperor scorpion in there and two of these guys in there. And everybody was swearing up and down, left and right. These two green scorpions were going to kick that emperor scorpion's rear end. And they were laying bets on it. I mean, taking odds, everything. They were betting on this thing. And for the longest time, these guys, the two green ones, got together. The emperor scorpion got by himself, and they just sat there and went in circles in this wash basin. They weren't coming anywhere near each other. They didn't want anything to do with each other. And some of the guys were starting to get annoyed with it and getting bored and said, okay, this isn't what we were expecting. And somebody reached up and kicked the wash basin and moved all the scorpions closer to the center. And once that happened, the green one squared off and the emperor scorpion squared off. And then all the guys started getting excited. It's like, oh yeah, now we're going to get some action. We're going to see what happens now. And so they squared off like that, kind of circled around for a little bit, and people started getting bored again. Somebody reached up and smacked the edge of the wash basin again, which moved them a little bit closer. And when that happened, it was over before you even knew it started. I mean, this guy right here reached out with both of his two front pincers, grabbed one green one, grabbed the other green one, and tagged both of them with his tail so fast that if you'd have blinked, you'd have missed it, and it only looked like a flinch. Like it went, that was it. It was over. This dude knocked out both of them like it was nothing. I mean, Chuck Norris ain't got nothing on this guy. I'm telling you that right now. And he was another one that you had to look for in your boots. You had to look for in your clothes, in your underwear, in your shirts, everything else. There's there's this one fella. He'd gone to the latrine one time, and it wasn't the emperor scorpion. It was one of the yellow scorpions that he encountered. He went in there and he was sitting on the toilet there in the latrine, and all of a sudden, out comes this huge scream that you heard all across camp. And everybody turned and looked toward the latrine where the scream came from. The door comes flying open. And here this dude is standing with his drawers down to his ankles, running out of the latrine, trips and falls when he has to jump out of the thing, gets back up, starts running around, starts running to the first person that's anywhere close to him, which happens to be a dude, and says, "Hey man, there's a scorpion on my butt. Get it off, get it off." No, of course he wasn't using that kind of language. You can just imagine what he was saying, but YouTube won't let me say stuff like that, so not going there. Anyway, so he's like, "Get it off, get it off, get it off." Dude's going, no, I am not touching your booty. Nope. So this guy goes running around, catches one more person, and that dude said, "Nope, nope, 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 not doing it." And he turns around, and the next person he sees was one of our females. He goes running over to her and says, "There's a scorpion on my butt, scorpion on my butt, get it off, get it off." And by this time, the scorpion was long gone. But he was so freaked out. She looked at him and and looked down at his butt. And she got this Cheshire cat grin on her face. And we all knew what was about to happen. We all knew what was about to happen. She says, all right, look, turn around, I'll get it off. She rears back, just as far back as she can, and she lays into that boy as hard as she can, tags him right on the rear end, left a welt and a red mark almost instantly. That boy jumped up and screamed. We were laughing we laughed so hard about that one. I mean, it even overpowered the one about my friend leaping over cots and stuff. We were cracking up about that so hard, because if you can just imagine some guy coming out of a latrine with his drawers around his ankles, flip-flopping around in the wind, running up to a guy and saying, "Hey, there's a scorpion on my butt, get it off." Yeah, it just, we were rolling for weeks on that one. And if the scorpions weren't bad enough, and the camel spiders weren't bad enough, you still had the sand vipers to deal with. Fortunately, we didn't really see any of those, but we did see this fella. I forget what he's called. He's not an iguana, and he's not a Gila monster, but he's kind of part of the Gila monster family. And we were driving in one of our military vehicles across the desert, trying to get somewhere. I forget where. And we look out and we see this thing, legs just moving. Dust kicking up off in the distance, and we get a closer look and we see it's one of these guys. And this dude is hanging right alongside, running parallel to us, going the same direction, same speed, everything. We reach up and tap on a window, and we asked the driver how fast he was going. He was going 35 miles an hour. And this thing was keeping up. He was keeping up with us. So we pointed, we told the driver, we pointed over at the thing, and the driver saw it, and we said, "Speed up, let's see how fast it can go." He ends up getting up to, I think it was like 43, 44 miles an hour before we actually started to start pulling away from this thing. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, oh my God, we're out here in the middle of the desert like this, sleeping with all these guys. Are we even on Earth right now? Because this surely seems like we're on another freaking planet. And some of the other guys started joking around about Star Wars and Star Trek and everything else, and how it kind of reminded them of certain worlds and everything else. And it was just, it's an unbelievable experience that unless you've ever actually been there and seen it and done it and whatnot, it's hard to even fathom. But that's why I'm showing you guys these pictures and talking about what I experienced with them. Because, we were there to fight a war, but we also had all these other things that we had to contend with. So, I mean, it's I had to talk about this stuff in order to get that foundation for you guys. So, at this point, um, give me just a second. How much time we got left? 15 minutes? All right. So, with 15 minutes left, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off for tonight and save some stuff for next week because there's a lot more to talk about. Because I'm going to get into talking about the people that I was there with, some of the experiences I had within my unit, and talk about some of that kind of stuff, the mindset and how it changes once you actually get into combat, and things of that nature. But that's going to require a little bit more time than we have tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for question and answer time. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them up on the YouTube live chat, and we'll try and get those up on the screen for you. If you want and you don't have access to being able to do the live chat, we also have a phone and number where you can call in a question if you like. So do we have any questions up there, Danielle? Oh, oh, thank you, Donnie. Appreciate you being here tonight. It's my pleasure. Okay, we don't have any current questions up right now, so we'll put that number back up. Um, Going forward in the future, and I want to say to everybody that's out there watching or will watch this later because we are recording this. Um, I just want to let you guys know um, we originally started this beginning of last year, um, but because of everything that was going on with COVID and everything else, finances just weren't there to be able to keep up with this, which is why we haven't had one of these in a while. Uh, but I mean, doing this kind of stuff is expensive. Right now, I'm trying to do it on YouTube because it's free with YouTube. You don't get charged with that. But there's a lot of other stuff behind the scenes, like the software and equipment and everything else that need to be kept up, purchased, upgraded, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not cheap to do these sort of things. So when you guys show up, I sincerely appreciate it. A lot of time and effort goes into it to make these things happen for you guys. Can you put that back up for me, Danielle? Can you go a little more in depth about the demonic presence you felt when you touched down? Uh, I can try. Um, like I said, it was it's hard to describe what that felt like. It made you cringe right from the core. You walked out and it was like this heavy weight, like a massive feeling of oppression that just weighted down on your body. You almost felt like you were getting squashed into the ground, um, and it was rather chilling. Um, but it was literally, I mean, like if this were the doorway in the airplane, right? My body was here, and my foot and my leg were here, and it was like I was passing through the like a membrane or something. As I stepped out of the plane, crossing that threshold, it like moved from my feet all the way up until the top, until I was all the way through the threshold of the door. Um, I don't. The only way I could think to try and describe how that happened, um, if you've ever seen like Stargate One, when they walk through the Stargate and everything just kind of melds as they walk through, and you just kind of see them disappear into that whatever that is, into the Stargate. That's kind of what it was like. Um, but yeah, it was just such an ugly, gross, nasty, dirty, oppressive feeling. It made you just want to turn right back around and go right back into the airplane. Um, it was just, ugh. Like I said, it was hard to describe, but even now thinking back to it, I can remember the feeling. I can still subconsciously remember what it felt like. But again, trying to describe how that felt was, it's hard to put into words. But I hope that answers your question, Donnie. It is. I tried as best as I could to get that across, but um, yeah. So as I was saying, this stuff does cost money. It costs money to upkeep, costs money to um, maintain everything. Some subscriptions cost us some money to do this stuff, but we finally gotten to a point now where finances are allowing us to start it up again, and we hope to be able to continue doing these on a regular basis. But again, that's all going to depend on the financial part of it. Um, so going forward, if you guys like this and you want to see more of it, um, if you like the videos and the film work that we do and you want to see more of that, um, then by all means, we'll put up a link for you. Please consider. What's up? Sorry. Yeah. Um, so we'll put the link up for you if you guys want to consider contributing or helping us out in any way. This is probably the easiest and the best way for you guys to do it. Um, but going forward, yeah, we will probably need some help and support in this area to keep these things going. So if you like it, you enjoy it, you want to hear more of it, then by all means, please do so. If you want to donate for a specific purpose, whether that be for the continuation of this live stream or whether it be for our film work or other things like that, please make a note of that when you make your donations, because otherwise I'll just accept them as general donations for what we do, and it could go for the vlog or it could go for one of our films. But if you have something specific that you want it to go for, please do make a note of that. And also, because it is a donation, you're not purchasing anything, we're not giving you anything in return except for continuing to do these particular broadcasts and whatnot. Please send it to us as a friend or as family, as a gift, because you know how PayPal is, they'll charge you for stuff. But and we don't want that happening for you guys. But if you want to, please consider it. I'm not saying you have to. I'm not asking you for it. I'm just saying please consider it. And if you want to, this is the link that you can send it to. So with that, I'm gonna call it an evening, and I'm gonna leave you with a final slideshow, just to keep everything fresh in your minds as far as what we talked about tonight, and leave you with some closing thoughts about what it was like to be in Saudi Arabia.